This is LBC News.
Well, let's start right there because US intelligence chiefs are testifying at a Senate hearing right now in Washington, D.C., including amongst them, of course, the CIA director. Let's go live to Washington right away and speak to our correspondent, Simon Marks. And there's been quite a few heated exchanges at this committee hearing already. Good afternoon.
Very much so, Jim. And it's important to underscore that this committee hearing was previously scheduled. It hasn't happened as a direct result of the story that broke here about 24 hours ago, the astonishing revelation that senior cabinet officials and other national security officials from within Donald Trump's administration were in a chat room on the commercially available app Signal. Inadvertently, a chat room that a senior journalist here in Washington, Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, had been invited into, seemingly at the behest of the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, who almost certainly did not intend to invite Mr. Goldberg into that chat room. And what we're seeing at this committee hearing is a standoff, essentially, between senior officials within the Trump administration who insist that absolutely nothing was done wrong, that there was no classified information whatsoever shared in that Signal group chat, and Jeffrey Goldberg, who's not participating in this committee hearing, but who absolutely insists not only that he was able to access detailed battle plans concerning the Trump administration's decision to go after the Iran-backed Houthi rebels who have been making life such a nightmare for commercial vessels and others in the sea lanes of the Red Sea, but also that he, Mr. Goldberg, is redacting that information and not putting it into the public domain because he believes it's top secret and it certainly shouldn't have been discussed in that chat room. So let's catch up with some of the audio from today's hearing because it has indeed been dramatic, starting with the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, testifying that he did nothing wrong.
My communications, to be clear, in a Signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
Well, we will make that determination because if it's not classified, share the text with the committee.
That's Senator Mark Warner, the ranking Democrat on the committee. 3 times he tried to get Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, even to confirm that she was in the Signal group chat. She tried to sidestep the question each and every time. Then after John Ratcliffe, the CIA Director, conceded that he'd been in the group, her defences appeared to melt away. But she also found herself on the receiving end of some pretty contentious exchanges with Senator Warner of Virginia.
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if there was no classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have it both ways. These are important jobs. This is our national security. Bobbing and weaving and trying to, filibuster your answer.
And that's been the general tone from Democrats on the committee, unlike Republicans, who have been very supportive of all the officials that are testifying at this committee hearing. Senator Ron Wyden is a Democrat from Oregon. He says heads must roll.
Obviously, my colleagues and I feel very strongly about the war planning meeting over unclassified phones. Obviously reckless, obviously dangerous. Both the mishandling of classified information and the deliberate destruction of federal records are potential crimes that ought to be investigated immediately. And I want to make clear that I'm of the view that there ought to be resignation, starting with the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of Defense.
And Senator Wyden also pushed Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, and John Ratcliffe, the CIA Director, on whether they will now cooperate with investigations into precisely what took place in that Signal chat room. Given that they insist there was no classified information, Senator Wyden invited them, therefore, to cooperate with inquiries.
I just think it's important to follow through here. Would the two of you cooperate with an audit to confirm that that is the case?
I have no objection.
Senator, I'll certainly comply with any follow-up that the National Security Council would deem appropriate. But again, to be clear, the use of Signal message end-to-end encryption applications is permissible and was, in this case, used permissibly, at least to my understanding, and in a lawful manner.
But let's just focus in depth there on what the CIA director said, because he didn't say he would cooperate with any investigation, unlike Tulsi Gabbard. He said he will engage in any follow-up that the National Security Council deems advisable. And of course, the National Security Council is still today led by Mike Waltz, the man who appears to have initiated this catastrophe by connecting initially with Jeffrey Goldberg on Signal and then adding him inadvertently to this group chat. Mike Waltz's boss is Donald Trump. So the chance of the National Security Council deeming it advisable that any kind of serious investigation should take place, I think is relatively low. Senator Martin Heinrich of New Mexico had a big question about the claims that Gabbard and Ratcliffe had made relating to the fact that the content of the signal messaging was not classified information.
Did this conversation at some point include information on weapons packages, targets, or timing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Director Gabbard, same question.
Same answer, and defer to the Department of Defense on that question.
Well, those are two different answers, but you're saying that was not part of the conversation.
To my knowledge.
The precise operational issues were not part of this conversation.
Correct.
Also testifying today, Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, who was asked if a criminal investigation has yet been opened by the FBI into this leak. He said that he'd only heard about it last night, and as of this morning, no investigation was getting underway. Huge questions arise in all of this, not just for the security of America's secrets, but also for number 10, because the UK is a member of Five Eyes, the intelligence sharing group that brings together Britain, the United States, Australia, Canada and New Zealand. And there are former top officials here who are saying privately that they believe the UK has to reconsider whether it now shares any intelligence with the United States, given the fast and loose ways with which these top officials have played with American secrets. President Trump, in a brief interaction with NBC News earlier today, said that Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, has learnt his lesson. That suggests that the White House is circling the wagons and absolutely hoping that no heads are going to have to roll as a result of this scandal. And I think it really now all comes down to Republicans in Congress. Are they going to remain, as they have during this committee hearing, largely supine, or will there be any move by senior Republicans on Capitol Hill to say, hang on a second, this is such an embarrassment, not just nationally, but globally. Someone's got to take the fall for it, and it's got to be a senior figure like the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, or even the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. At the moment, no signs of any vertebrae being exhibited by Republicans on Capitol Hill as the administration digs in, but clearly calls growing from Democrats not only for heads to roll, but for very significant investigations to begin into all of this.
Live in Washington, D.C., our correspondent Simon Marks.